Welcome to today's episode of the Working Wisdom podcast series, brought to you by the CT Bauer College of Business at the University of Houston. We're having a conversation about work-life balance, how to navigate and overcome challenges within your career, and how to make business more accommodating to a diverse workforce.
Hey guys, welcome to another episode of How Do They Do It? My name is Caroline Ferguson. I am a graduating senior here at the University of Houston, finishing up my undergraduate program within the Wolff Center for Entrepreneurship. Super excited to be done. I'm also the owner and founder of Grateful & Company, an organization and business on mission to end suicide on college campuses. So I do a bunch of different fun things. And today I am joined by one of my friends and mentors, Miss Crystal Christmas. Crystal, you want to say hi?
Hi, thank you for having me here today.
You're so welcome. I wanted to bring Crystal on because Crystal is, to say the least, kind of a world changer. She has her hand in so many different things here on campus. She's a mentor within the Wolff Center, and she is radically changing the lives of cancer patients every single day. So Crystal, do you want to tell them a little bit about yourself, what you're currently working on, and maybe touch on being a mentor within the Wolff Center and how that is?
Sure, I'd be happy to. First of all, I hope I can live up to the world changer introduction. You know, one of the things that I realized a few years ago is that you just get up and do it. And, while I'd love to change the world, I think it happens in many little steps. And so I haven't quite gotten there yet, but I am doing the little steps. So first of all, I'm super excited to be here, and I love the Wolff Center for Entrepreneurship. I love the students, and I love you, Caroline, as you know. Just fell in love with your work and your mission and your story, from the first day that I met you. And so it's really a privilege and an honor to be able to work with students like you who are actually the world changers as far as I'm concerned. And so I've been mentoring here at WCE for a few years now, I guess. I don't know exactly when that started, but had the pleasure of meeting some of the students through the program over the last few years, and have really enjoyed that. I have found that it has brought more to me than I think I have brought to the program, although I'm always happy to share my experience. And so you and I kind of connected on a story of tragedy when we first met, and Dave Cook put us together saying, hey, you really should tell Crystal your story. And you did, and I told you my story, and we cried. And
yep, lots of tears.
Yeah, and we ended up, working together. And, you inspire me so much because the work that I do, like your work, it's sometimes very lonely, and it can be very difficult. And because of the tragedies, and I'll get into that story in just a second, but because of the tragedies, we've learned how to talk about it, but they're still not easy to talk about. They're still very personal. And so when I met you, and I realized you took something, the loss of your father, and turned it into something that would potentially, change the world, will change the world. And I realized, hey, I'm doing the same thing in a different area with a different, I don't know if you'd call it a product, but a different mission. I was like, whoa, if I was your age, what, if I knew what I know now at your age, what differences could I have made? So I get real excited to be here and see that youth happening, that inspiration going on. In my particular story, as you know, I lost a spouse to cancer. And his name was William. William was diagnosed with cancer and given a prognosis of 6 months to live. And we were really just starting our lives at that time. We were actually engaged to be married, and we hurried the wedding up on his request. But it was hard to face the fact that my future was not going to be what I thought it was going to be. And at the same time, I almost didn't believe it. And so I really felt like I could change it for William. And I didn't really think much about, other people going through cancer. I really just wanted William to live. And I did what I do when I'm under stress, which is go to data. So analyze, what do we have here? What's the information? What can we see? What can we change? And over the course of his illness, which he lived 15 months, I was able to come up with spreadsheets and charts and graphs that explained not only what was happening to him, but look at what are the possibilities of what's going to happen in the future. And so I immersed myself in the medical terminology and asked about a zillion questions to the doctors. I'm sure that they got tired of me. We went to doctors all across the country, examined how other people were doing it in other states, and considered going outside the country, but he decided he wanted to stay within the United States. And I got this picture of what was going on in the cancer world. And so I came back to my computer with that data, crunched the data, and said to him one day, "Hey, you need to go to the doctor. Something's wrong." And he's like, "How do you know?" And I was like, "The data's telling me." And so we went into a doctor's visit, and I had a conversation with an oncologist about, changing his treatment regimen, because even though on standard protocol he wasn't ready to change, the data was saying that it wasn't working. And I realized that day in that conversation that I knew something, not that the doctors didn't know, because essentially they had the same information, but that the medical system didn't support the revelation of. So the way that they were looking at data and the short amount of time that a doctor can spend with a patient didn't allow this information to come to the surface. So essentially for me, what that meant was stress, my own stress, was driving this data to the surface. And I would stay up night after night studying the information. So the tragedy in all of that was that while I may have impacted William's quality of life, and possibly, and a couple of the doctors mentioned that it was possible that I impacted the length of his life through this staying ahead of the curve perspective that I had, the reality was that he passed away. And I wanted to have nothing to do with cancer after that. And so in the months after he passed, I would get phone calls from people whose loved ones were diagnosed with cancer, and they would say, "Can you help me? I know you know a lot about this. Can you help me?" And I would say, "You do know he died, right?" Because I couldn't figure out why they were calling me. And so they'd say, "Yeah, but my loved one has 6 months to live or a year to live, or, we don't even know what's happening. We don't even know what they have. We just heard the word cancer and everything shut down from there." So I began to work with cancer patients, and I began to just sort of be that voice for them of whether it was explaining in layman's terms the information they had received from their doctors or that they were looking at in their medical records, or just holding their hand. One of the things that I do now is I have a couple of homes, and one of them is in Houston, very close to the med center. And so patients fly in from all over to come to the Houston Medical Center and get treatment. And as I've connected with these patients, I realize they're staying in hotel rooms and their expenses are high and their families are suffering in some cases. And so I've been able to offer them my home and say, "Here, stay here. There's no reason for you to spend the money or be in hardship." And that has been incredibly rewarding for me. And that's not around a foundation or anything. That's just one of the things that I do, where my heart is with these people. And so what I realized was that this tragedy was turned into actually this blessing, because not only did William and I focus on those last 15 months, we focused on the important things, the gratitude, which I know resonates with you, but we also, the gratitude for the time we had together.
Sure.
But we also uncovered a new process and a new way of looking at cancer. And then we made all these new friends. And I'm still making new friends, who have the same values I do, because cancer patients really know what life is about, whether they're terminal or not, or their diagnosis comes early or late. The reality is cancer changes people's lives. And so moving forward, as this was happening and I was helping these patients, I started creating spreadsheets for them and their loved ones, who some of the cancer patients, I wasn't doing it directly with them, but the loved ones that I knew. And people were saying, they didn't really understand what I was doing. They understood the concept, but they couldn't do it themselves. And it was so overwhelming, so much data in a medical record, that I found myself doing data analysis for other people. And no, I'm not a doctor. I wasn't giving them opinions. I was just bringing to the surface what the data said. Here's the data. Take it to your doctor and see what they say. So I realized I went back through William's medical record, and I looked back a couple of years before his diagnosis, and I was shocked to find that I could see that something was wrong. And so that was one of the most tragic moments that I had within this experience. And at the same time, one of those moments, you'll never forget, that just blossomed to, an opportunity. Because if I knew then what I know now, he'd still be here. And I wholly believe that. And so I didn't understand why it was missed at that time. I didn't understand why someone didn't do something. But the net result was, I was talking to a friend of mine one day, and they said, well, what are you going to do? Are you going to sue the doctors who didn't see it? And I said, sue them? No, I don't want to be in lawsuits. And who knows what that would even, what would even come of that. If it was successful, there'd be some money. And one of the things I know is that money is a tool. It is not something that changes your life, but the way you use it can change your life. And so there was no amount of money that would bring William back. There was no amount of money that would make me happy. And who knows if they even, they were just doing their jobs. They were just doing their jobs within a system that existed that, was working for a lot of people. So my friend said, well, then if you're not going to do that, what are you going to do? And I said, oh, I'm going to change this. I'm going to change this for somebody else. Somebody else's William, somebody else's husband, somebody else's father. And so that's what I set out to do. And, I'm working on that currently. I have a company called GIANT Informatics, and we have a project called Chart the Course. And Chart the Course is all about taking that data and changing outcomes, basically bringing actionable insights to the surface so that we can get better outcomes. And the great thing is it's not just for cancer patients. So Chart the Course was designed to help cancer patients look at their data and to be able to understand what is going on within their body without having to know the medical terminology, without having to go to medical school. I give this analogy sometimes to people that the day that William got diagnosed was like the day I entered medical school, even though I didn't really.
Right.
And I also started treating my first patient that day. So the quality of my work, 4 years later is very different than the quality of my work the day I began the education. So I've learned a lot since he was here, and actually he used to tease me and say he was a science experiment for me. And he told me 2 weeks before he passed away, two things. One, he said, I don't ever want you to look back and think that you didn't do enough. I know you did everything you could and more than most people would do. And he also said, I really hope you will pursue this. I really hope you will take this knowledge that you've gained and into take the medical world and turn it upside down. And so, as I mentioned a little while ago, I started to run away from it, and the phone calls kept coming in, and I really was angry, and I really didn't want to do it. And then one day I just surrendered. It actually took me close to 2 years to fully surrender after he passed and say, all right, fine. I guess my life is about cancer and really about helping those people. But in that process, I had this discovery that was world-changing potentially if I'm given the opportunity to take it forward. I learned that you can actually take the data of cancer patients and take the data of healthy patients and make comparisons and stop someone from going down the path of cancer, because there are, and this is a layman's explanation, if there's any doctors listening, they would probably go, oh, that's oversimplified, but just so that everyone can understand,
Sure.
The causes of cancer, there are genetic predispositions or genetic causes, mutations within the genes that doctors can look at the genetic workup now and be able to say, yes, this is a mutation. But there's also environmental factors. So a lot of people think it's one or the other. My personal belief is that it's a combination of, things within a complex system that align just so, it's kind of like the blowout that you have driving down the road.
Right.
It's like, yeah, you're close to getting new tires, but if you hadn't run over that, that hard piece of plastic or metal in the road, then that wouldn't have happened. And there's this alignment of things that happen that actually where cancer takes hold and starts to grow. And if you can adjust that, if you can know it's coming and make those adjustments, then you can actually change the outcomes. And so what I'm currently working on now, and it's expanding to undiagnosed patients, not just cancer patients, but patients who are having chronic illnesses, is how do we look at the data to tell us, A, what's going on in the body and what adjustments can be made. So if you're listening to the radio and your ears are hurting, you turn the radio down a little bit. And it's just one little thing that you do. But you still, the radio's still playing, the music's still playing, but an adjustment's been made. And so there are these adjustments we can make within our body. And I don't want to oversimplify it because the human body is incredibly complex. But the great thing is that the human mind is also incredibly complex, and we have millions of great minds, brilliant minds working on this problem, but they've primarily worked on it from the biological level. They've looked at it as treatments, and they've also looked at causes. And in this world that we live in now with big data, there's a new opportunity that wasn't there 10 years ago. The electronic health record, now, it's mandated for the most part that your data has to be in electronic form. Well, with the data in electronic form, you can take the data and manipulate it. And there's some limitations to that. That's one of the things that GIANT is working on, is being able to overcome those limitations to aggregate that data. But all in all, the work that I do is basically to help people, because I learned a long time ago that the way to get everything you want in life is to help other people get everything they want. And so I am really, really pleased to be able to say that I don't do this for money. I think that there may be a true business opportunity where I can employ a number of people in the future within this program. But the reality is, like you, I do it because I'm passionate about it. And if it turns out to be something that a lot of people can have jobs from, well, that's just the icing on the cake. But anyway, in a nutshell, that's my work with cancer patients. I do a few other things as well, but that's where my heart is.
Awesome. And now a quick word from our sponsors.
Join the conversation. Bauer College's Working Families Initiative is bridging the gap between industry and academia to create a conversation on how organizations can make the workplace more family-friendly. We're talking about flexibility, maternity and paternity leave, and career transitions. For more information about the Working Families Initiative at Bauer College, including upcoming events, visit bauer.uh.edu/workingfamilies.
Welcome back, guys, to How Do They Do It? My name is Caroline, and I'm here with my good friend and mentor, Miss Crystal Christmas. If you've heard the previous segment of this episode, you're probably in tears, and your heart might be on fire, and you're thinking, I can go change the world, because Crystal definitely has a story that will set your heart ablaze. Thank you, Crystal, for sharing all of that amazingness with us. It's so inspiring being somebody that is also trying to pursue a mission based on passion, to see somebody doing it and being successful and being fulfilled. It's such an amazing source of encouragement. And before I ask my next question, I wanted to jump into a story I have of Crystal, one of our first encounters, actually. As Crystal mentioned at the beginning of her story, she's involved within the Wolff Center for Entrepreneurship, Dave Cook being the director of that program. Very early on, he said, hey, Caroline, you need to go talk to Crystal. Having known where my heart was and my mission with this whole ending suicide, empowering gratitude, yada, yada, yada. He said, you need to go talk to Crystal Christmas. And I was like, that's a fantastic name. I would love to talk to a lady named Crystal Christmas. So I met Crystal at the home that she was referencing in the earlier part of this episode, I met her at her house, and there was a conference room, so we went in, and I was like, okay, well, this is cool, you have a conference room. And I said, oh, this is beautiful. Do you normally stay here? Oh, no. There's a cancer patient here right now. There are people living here that are seeking treatment, and they just stay here. I give them my home. I remember just being completely baffled by the concept of somebody giving their home to somebody that didn't have to do that, that wasn't getting paid to do that. No, there was no incentive to do that, but Crystal was, and Crystal continues to do so. And at the end of that meeting, a beautiful partnership was formed, and I couldn't be more grateful for that. But I wanted to share that because what she says is so true. There are people living in her home that desperately need help and are able to get it in a more comfortable way because she's opened up her heart and her home to them. And I just think that's beautiful and wonderful. And I would encourage you guys, if you can do that in a capacity, go for it. Do it. You have no idea the impact that you're going to have on the people you're helping and you're lending a hand to. So with that being said, Crystal, I have a question for you.
Okay.
No wrong answers. Knowing what you do now, right? You've pursued a mission on passion, for lack of better term. What would you do differently? Is there something, a piece of advice or a takeaway that you could potentially use, knowing what you do now, and offer to the people listening that maybe want to pursue something that's built on passion and a hope and maybe a dream to change the world?
This is a really interesting question for me because obviously I've reflected a lot on what I would do differently. And, without living in the past, because we have to go forward, we can look to the past for data. And so everything is data to me, in case you haven't noticed. But the thing that I would do differently, and I think that applies to anyone else going through either what I went through, going through what you went through, building your business, in any application whatsoever in life, is to trust yourself. You know more than you think you do. And so what I found is that the data was always stored in the back of my mind. I knew William was sick a couple years before he was diagnosed. I didn't believe that I knew because I wasn't a doctor, but I could see the signs. I could see the weight loss. I could see the irritability. All the data was there. I didn't dig deep into the hard data, the numbers, but had I done that, had I put that effort in, then it would have changed things. And so after he passed away, I mentioned to you that I kind of ran from cancer, and I'm 2 years behind now. And so really all that boiled down to was I said, you know what? I was in learning disability in the special ed class in the first grade. I don't have a college degree. I grew up in a relatively poor family, working class family, not poor, poverty standards like in third world countries, but, poor for America. And I didn't believe I could do this. And so I think when he passed away, the experience I had was, okay, I've already had the worst day of my life. What's next? Because really at this point, what is failure? When you lose your spouse, and you were trying to not lose your spouse, that's the ultimate failure. Or a child or a parent or, insert any scenario there. And I went, okay, I'm just going to do this. And I trusted myself. I trusted that I knew what I knew and that I believed what I believed and that I had the passion that was flowing out of me, and I went for it, but I wasted a lot of time before I got there. So I would trust myself if I had it to do over again.
What an awesome answer. That is so true, though, second guessing is one thing, but not acting potentially maybe out of fear or just, what could the outcome be? What if I'm not successful? I think that's a common fear with just business owners, period, maybe you have an idea that it could potentially be world-changing. It's like, but what if it doesn't work? What am I going to look like? What about all these people that have invested in me and these people that care about me and have supported me? And what if it doesn't work? It's like, well, who cares if it doesn't work? Go for it.
And I'll tell you, if it doesn't work, that's sometimes a blessing, because what happens every time something doesn't work is you learn something else. And so, going into this idea of I have to be successful or I have to do this right is really one of the biggest illusions that keeps people from changing the world. And I think what's really cool about the generation that's up and coming now is they don't really care that much about what people think.
No.
And so it doesn't hold them back. And I think we will see a changed world.
I'm looking forward to it for sure. And hopefully I can be a part of that, which is super exciting.
You will be.
Oh, thanks, Crystal. You're awesome. So let's, I guess, diverge a little bit and talk a little bit more about the Wolff Center, since you mentioned you're definitely a part of that. The Wolff Center blessed me with one of the greatest things ever, and that was an introduction to you. But I know that so many other students are impacted by you as well, and your story and your mission and your involvement and contributions. But I wanted to ask you on the flip side, like, why? Why did you want to be a part of it to begin with? Why mentorship? Like, do you have a mentor that you love? Why did you want to be one?
So most of the things I've done in life, and thank you for asking that question because I love to tell you this quick story. Most of the things I've done in life have been out of lack, out of scarcity, out of not having enough. I didn't have a mentor. I had good friends. I had people who had information. I had wonderful parents who taught me what they knew, but I didn't have someone who was really going, hey, you can do this, which I believe is what mentorship is all about. It's not just the transfer of knowledge, and there is a lot of that that's happening, but the reality is we're cheerleaders. We're saying, I believe in you from this perspective of experience. And when someone who's done something that you're not sure you can do, they've already done it, and they're going, hey, you can do it, it inspires confidence. And so I became a mentor because there wasn't someone standing there for me in that capacity for most of my life. And that's changed now because now I seek mentors.
Right.
I just didn't know to do that before. But growing up, my father, I remember riding in the car with him one day, and he pulled over and helped a lady on the side of the road. And, we were late to wherever we were going, and it was many, many years ago, so I don't remember the details, but I just remember when he got back in the car asking him, Dad, why did you do that? And he said, do what? And I said, stop and change a stranger's tire. And he said, because someday, if you're on the side of the road, or your mother's on the side of the road, or one of your sisters is on the side of the road, I hope someone like me stops to change the tire for you. So, how could I not be a mentor?
Yeah.
I've had so many blessings in my life to not be able to give those and share those with people who are, especially people who are seeking them. Usually when people aren't seeking them, they're not that interested, but to be able to give that back, I mean, isn't that what life is about?
Yeah, no, I love that. As a student, soon to be graduate, I guess, the difference for me throughout college and really just building a professional life, graduating from high school and navigating college and whatnot, I don't think I would have made it if it weren't for mentorship. Mentorship. And I have a mentor that I've had since my junior year of high school, and I have you, and I have, Dave Cook, and I've got all these phenomenal people, and Vicky Cruz, and just fantastic human beings who have just offered to pour into me, and I have done nothing to deserve that. And the fact that people still do is beautiful. And I know I'm not the only one that you've poured into, and I know that they're immensely grateful because you definitely are a life changer and a lifesaver, clearly. But no, I can attest to getting a mentor. And if you're a student listening, get a mentor. If you're not in the Wolff Center and you haven't been paired with one on campus, and if you haven't thought about joining the Wolff Center, consider it. It'll change your life. But if you don't have a mentor, go get a mentor. Go find somebody, whether that be in like a field or an industry that you see yourself pursuing after graduation or during school. Go find somebody. Go shadow them. Go work for free. Go do something. Earn somebody's respect and trust and ask them for advice. Don't be so, I guess, not full of yourself, but don't be so confident that you know everything, because you don't. I don't. We don't.
I don't, for sure.
But learning from somebody who's been there is so valuable, Like Crystal's been there. Crystal's doing it right now as somebody who's trying to get started, like myself. She's been an immense value, and I want to say thank you, Crystal, for being here, Thank you for your heart and your mission and sharing your story and for radically changing the lives of everybody around you. And I guess that's the end of How Do They Do It? Crystal, I'm so grateful for you, and I'm so grateful for the listeners. Thank you guys for sticking around and hanging out with us this afternoon. Until next time, go Cougs.
Thank you for listening to today's episode of the Working Wisdom podcast series from the C.T. Bauer College of Business, brought to you by the Working Families Initiative. The initiative aims to provide support and access for women in business school and the workforce, and to generate research that organizations can use to implement policies and standards to benefit a diverse workforce. For more information about Bauer College and this podcast series, visit www.bauer.uh.edu/podcast.